Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening for our special Board of Directors meeting. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call to confirm our attendees. I'm Board President Julie Bocanegra, Vice President Victoria Bradford.
Here.
Director Rob Perkins.
Here.
Director Jenny Gronwalt.
Here.
Director Rachel Rogers.
Here.
Superintendent Mike Merlino.
Here.
Administrative Assistant Lori Stroll.
Here.
Great, thank you. Again, good evening. I'd like to announce the time as 5:36. I apologize for not being on time at the 5:30 mark. It was my technical difficulties here. Under Governor Inslee's proclamation 2028 in response to the COVID-19 outbreak, which temporarily suspends portions of the Open Public Meeting Act, the proclamation requires that all attendance at an open public meeting not take place in person, but occur remotely, including the board, directors, and the public. Our meeting this evening is conducted via Zoom audio webinar. At this time, I would like to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, our first order of business is to adopt the agenda. Can we entertain a motion to adopt the agenda?
Victoria Bradford moves for adoption of tonight's agenda.
Director Grunwald seconds.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. It's an aye for me. Victoria?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
And Rachel?
Aye.
All right, next we'll go ahead and move on to the board consent agenda. We'll entertain a motion for the board consent agenda.
Director Grunwald moves to approve the board consent agenda.
Director Perkins, second.
Okay, so moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. It's an aye for me. Victoria?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Next is the superintendent consent agenda. We'll entertain a motion for approval.
Director Rogers moves to adopt the superintendent consent agenda as presented.
Director Bradford seconds.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. It's an aye for me. Victoria?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Jenny?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
Great, thank you. All right, moving right along. Next is the superintendent report. I'm going to turn it over to Mike to give us some updates.
Yeah, thank you, Julie, and thank you, everyone. I want to take a little time to update the board and the community on a few different things. The first thing I want to talk about is that tonight we are going to be approving the budget. 2 weeks ago, I did a budget presentation that outlined kind of what we had built as a budget, and we talked about a lot of the uncertainties as we go into the 2021 school year with respect to the budget. And there were questions around layoffs, furloughs, things of that sort, and we talked a little bit about the fact that we were having to look at that due to potential revenue reductions in enrollment, and also I think definite revenue reductions in transportation with respect to how our transportation funding system works. And we were able to work with PSE in the last few weeks. I think it was end of last week, the large group PSE adopted an MOU around opening school. And I think Office Clerical PSE is going to be voting on Thursday night on their MOU proposal. But the reason I bring this up is that today we did unfortunately have to begin, I think actually we began yesterday afternoon with conversations with staff members that will be affected by the furlough having to do with opening school not on site on a daily basis. We were fortunate. I feel awful. I mean, today's a terrible day when we have to go through that process and notify folks of this occurrence. We did agree that we would furlough our employees rather than laying off our employees. By furloughing, that means that they have continued access to insurance. It keeps them connected with the district through their insurance. While they will still have to make a premium contribution, it at least keeps them with us connected as we bring staff back when we open our schools, or as we over time are able to bring in more students. But the number of staff members affected by this was approximately 475. That's a large number. So I want to first just acknowledge that, the impact of this on as many of our coworkers in the district. It's a very unfortunate and sad thing. It's very unfortunate that we have to do this, but I think that we do have to, with respect to the potential reductions. We've talked, and we'll talk a little bit more when we get into the budget, around the types of reductions that are possible and the impacts on the district. There's no question we want to bring as many of our folks back as quickly as we possibly can. And I shared, I think at our meeting a couple weeks ago, one of the things that we did do was to, we had a hiring freeze in the spring, in May, June. Every year you have jobs turn over in the spring, different people come back, we hire over the summer. We basically froze a number of classified positions with the thought that this potentially could occur. While that 475 number for large group PSC is a huge number, I do think that we probably protected about 200 positions with that hiring freeze. So while it's a little bit of a silver lining, but it's still an awful day. And I just want to start with mentioning that there will be reductions as well within the office clerical group. They probably will be a little different than they are with the large group PSC group, but we won't talk about those. Once we get the MOU in place with office clerical, we'll begin notifying those folks. I shared with the board the types of positions in large group. There are things such as bus drivers, paraprofessionals, playground paras, security guards, a number of positions. And just wanted to begin with showing our staff respect as much as we can in a very difficult time. The second thing I want to mention is that we are completing, next Tuesday is the first day of school, September 1st. We'd hope to be opening fully in our 3 new elementary schools. We are winding up the last punch list things with respect to those 3 buildings, the new Image, new Emerald, and new Sifton. I think that there are scheduled tours for each of you for this coming Friday. I have to say, I think everybody that's been in those schools and the folks that are in, because we do have teachers in the schools and administrators in the schools now, are very pleased with what they're being offered in the new schools. I know that I really appreciate the work that Sue has done in working with our project managers, working with our contractors, and getting us to the point where we are today. It's a significant thing, and we are hopeful and looking forward to the time that we have the ability to actually bring our kids into school. And I'll talk here in a second about the plan around that and the speed with which we will have folks into our schools. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Really good news there. The schools are beautiful. We're very excited about that. The third thing I want to talk about is our plan around reopening, and kind of let's backtrack a little bit with where we've been and how we've got to where we are today, and then where we are planning to go with respect to our plan. You're very familiar with the work that's gone on over the summer with county superintendents, with the county health department, with yourself, with our staff. I want to focus more on our conversations with EEA on the potential MOU. We were very pleased in June when we were able to come to agreement on a 3-year contract with EEA, which everyone has ratified. Everybody's very happy about that. When we negotiated with EEA in that process, we were fully aware of the fact that we needed to get a deal in place around a 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever year contract we had for 2021 before we could start talking about an MOU and the potential impacts with respect to opening. And you'll remember in the summer, we talked a lot about, or the late spring, early summer, the path back and trying to bring students in. And of course, we realized over the summer that that was going to be problematic to do that. Well, when we finished our negotiations with EEA on the 3-year deal, I think it was at late July that we started our conversations on an MOU. And we had good conversations, and I think we had 4, maybe 5 sessions where we had conversations that ultimately led to August 14th, which was a couple Fridays ago. And we were interested in trying to get an MOU settled with our folks before August 18th, which was a week ago today, which was 2 weeks before school started, because we have responsibility with our OSPI reopening plan we have the responsibility to make schedules available to our community, to folks, to see what it is we're thinking about with respect to the actual schedule for the daily schedule and being able to publish that. We had a few webinars, board planning workshops, and ultimately filmed on the 17th, the webinar that was released on the 18th that got more specific into the plans. We didn't want to get too specific ahead of the last minute. We wanted to allow ourselves time through the MOU process to have the conversations with the EEA and make that happen. So we got to that Friday before, and we actually came to agreement with EEA at that meeting. Our district representatives bargaining were myself, our HR department, our executive director of teaching and learning, and our executive director of special services. EEA was represented by their president and their WEA rep, the negotiator for the WEA. We actually accepted the proposal provided to us by EEA on that Friday afternoon and spent quite a bit of time Friday afternoon kind of hammering out the details around things such as safety impacts, leaves, health leaves, childcare potential leaves related to staff members who have compromised members at home, and childcare options. We had worked with a partner to make sure that we were trying to provide slots for our staff to access childcare, and even work with our staff that might not need to have daycare until the 21st, which would have been the required day to return to school. Work with our provider on surveying staff, see if we needed to add some more sites so that we could provide care for those folks. So what was released in the plan on that Tuesday was basically what we had agreed to on Friday afternoon. Now, I will say, again, it was a verbal agreement, and it was the language was all written and ready to go. But in any bargaining process, both sides have the responsibility of then bringing what had been agreed to their governing board. In the case of the district, we obviously bring all of these agreements to the school board. The school board has to end up ratifying it. Same thing happens with EEA. They have an exec board that has to ratify that. And ultimately, on that following week, the EEA exec board voted that down, which is within their rights to do. just like it would be within our board's right to do in the same situation. I will say, however, it's not something that I've seen often from my perspective negotiating in the district for probably 18 plus years. We have had one that I can recall, other situation, not with EEA, but with another group where there was a tentative agreement that was voted down. Ultimately, it was approved at a subsequent meeting by that union. But I think the real impact isn't so much around, obviously there's all kinds of impacts, but the reason that more often than not these are approved is when we come forward, like our bargaining team is sent forward, and the same thing with EEA, PSE, EAA, any group. There's an amount of trust that there is when you're at the table and when you're trying to hammer out the finalizing details of something. And you kind of rely that you are speaking for your board. And so we are where we are today with that. We understand they voted that down. We have another bargaining session scheduled for Thursday. It's just an unfortunate situation. I think that probably trust is impacted somewhat based upon what happened, but we will continue to work with EEA to try to come up with a resolution. So with that being said, I want to talk about what's in the plan as we move forward, and what was shared in the email to staff last Tuesday on the 18th. And that was that we would start remotely. And I guess before I start talking about the plan, there have been a lot of emails that we've all seen and received. And the first thing I want to make sure that everybody is completely aware of, that the district's plan, the district's beliefs and thoughts are around nothing more than trying to serve our students. It's not a question of trusting our staff, our teaching staff. It's not a question of we need to have our staff in our building so that the principals can supervise them or manage them. Couldn't be further from the truth. I grew up in a family of teachers. My father was a teacher. My sister's a teacher. My other sister's a pair. I've got a daughter that's a teacher. I've lived in family education, my whole life, and I understand the work, and particularly in the situation that we're faced now, where we're having to work remotely, and it's a whole new ball game. And so I get that. I don't want to diminish anyone's feelings about why the district views things the way that they do, but I do want to say this has nothing to do with anything more than trying to serve students in our schools, and serving students in our schools safely and appropriately per the guidelines that we've been provided from the State Department of Health, endorsed by the governor, by OSPI, and by Dr. Melnick and Dr. Krager at the local health departments. Last week, there's a lot of talk right now, and we're going to get into kind of the path to a hybrid based upon the conversations we've had with county health. But there's been a lot of talk around the transmission rate that we see in the county, and whether we're in moderate or we're low, moderate or high. Last week, Clark County had 74.7 cases per 100,000 in the county, which put us in the moderate. We've moved to high as of today. The 74.7 has moved to 76.1 cases. So it's not a real significant shift in terms of the number of cases per 100,000, but with the metrics that they have, it moves us into high. But I want to make sure that everybody is aware of the work that was done at the State Department of Health around the decision tree that was created, looking at how do kids and how does staff come back to school. And last week, there was a press release that came out from jointly really from school district and from the county health department. But even in the high range, and I'll read what Dr. Melnick said, even when COVID-19 activity is in the high range, the state decision tree framework allows for limited in-person learning. This should be done in small groups and for students with the highest needs, such as students with disabilities, students who are homeless, those farthest from educational justice, and younger learners. That's from Dr. Melnick. And so what we've been talking about really at every one of our meetings that we've had with the board, which we've had one a week pretty much all summer long, That's the plan. When we decided to go remote, we had made the determination to go remote, but we had always made the determination that we were trying to get groups of 5 or less into our schools, which leads us to, and I guess when I say that, it's really not new to have kids in groups of 5 or less in our schools, because over the summer, we were able to operate a summer school program in 11 of our elementary schools that just concluded last week. We've had an extended school year in our schools over the summer with the special ed program. In the spring, we operated a successful daycare, and we really have had many of our staff working on site ever since things closed down. So we feel like we have successfully had students in school, and our plan kind of continues with that. So what I want to talk about a little bit is, in some of the emails, I think that there were, you know, I feel like when we do these, we hear each other talk so much that we think everybody should just understand what we're saying. But, you know, a lot of people are new to this, and that some of the terms and some of the thoughts, they're not always as clear as we might hope that they are. And so one of the things that I received an email from someone it wasn't really questioning the transparency, it was really questioning more the understanding of what we were saying. And when we talk about bringing kids back, does that mean every teacher comes back with 5 in their class? What exactly does that mean? So I want to kind of share a little bit from the perspective of the students, as well as from the perspective of the staff. What does this plan look like? We start off again next Tuesday, and we, from the beginning, have some of our students on IEPs being served basically from day one. Students at 49th Street Academy, students at the Transitions program. We're working with those staffs to make sure that those students are being served in our buildings. And you know, we provided the option of working on site starting the September 1st. We encouraged folks to be on site, but we allowed for the option for staff to work remotely from the 1st until the week of the 21st. And so in that time, as we're in 2.0, we're using tools and apps. We're building relationships with our students. We're building community with and connections with our class. We're just kind of working through helping kids understand what to expect. All the while, at the same time, we've got teachers reaching out to families to connect. So we're connecting with kids, we're connecting with families. Within those first 2 weeks, if you've viewed the webinar on the plan, there was a lot of conversation about these school engagement teams or student engagement teams. Those student engagement teams are identifying students at that point in time that we would be bringing into our school. So these are students identified that have issues potentially with their grades, with their engagement, with their attendance, any one of those areas. And it's in the team working with the teachers, with staff at the building, identifying who these students might be, then reaching out to families. And remember, one of the other things we had shared all along was that parents that wanted to remain remote, they had that option to remain remote. We will have that option for parents to remain remote, but the kids that are willing, that have been identified, would start coming in that 4th week of the school year. At the same time, I would also say that the first week of school and all weeks, we will have meal service available in all of our schools. We have one school that is impacted, that's Marion, where they don't have a neighborhood school right now because it was torn down, and they were going to be bused to Image, the old Image Elementary. We will provide transportation, meal deliveries starting the first week through kind of a parent order process that they're finalizing. But we will, the first week, be delivering meals to students that attend Marion. And we will be delivering students to schools in the 49th Street Academy and the Transition program. Within these student engagement teams, again, we're identifying students. We've also identified kindergartners as early learners who have not had access. The first week of school, they will be working with parents on the Walk Kids program. That could be Zoom, it could be on site, depending on the preference of the teacher, but we will be working with parents on that. And we are also working to try to set up a pilot in 1, 2, 3, 4. If we've got kindergartens where staff are in those first few weeks, kindergarten staff, we do plan on serving kindergarten students starting the 3rd week with transportation service to school in groups of 5 or less 2 days a week. So that is something that we're planning on starting the 3rd week of school with a pilot situation. And again, in all of these situations, I mentioned the MOU conversations we had. They have guidelines. We have guidelines. We've got building plans around social distancing, around student and staff attestations, around face coverings, around hygiene, cleaning, around protocols of getting students in and out of school. On our buses, we've got social distancing on our buses. We've got buses running to make sure that we're getting kids and we're not jamming kids on buses to make that happen. So we get to the 3rd week, we've identified kindergartners that are willing to participate, staff that are willing to pilot, and we're operating that in the 3rd week. By the 4th week, we actually by the 3rd week, we're also we're developing a delivery system of materials to families, books potentially, library books, supplies, anything that we deem as necessary to get to families. We start those deliveries with our bus the 3rd week on Wednesday. If we've got staff in and we're in a position to do it, we would start doing that on the 2nd week as well. But we definitely have that started by the 3rd week and then ongoing. So Wednesdays in our program is a non-student attendance day. That's when we would deliver the meals to Marion, and we do have waivers to be able to deliver 5 meals at a time, breakfast and lunch on that Wednesday, and we deliver supplies and materials on that Wednesday. So we have an ability to get these materials to our folks. Our teacher librarians, we're led by a couple of our teacher librarians in elementary and secondary, or a few, I think there's 3 maybe, that are kind of working on the protocols around how do our libraries work with our community. And that's going really well. I want to make it real clear, the student engagement teams are not identifying mass numbers of students. We're talking about in an elementary, that start of week 4, maybe 30 to 60 total kids outside of the kindergartners. It might be 15 in the morning, 15 in an afternoon session. We're talking 2-hour sessions. And when you think about spreading that out over the number of teachers in a building, it really could be 1 or 2 kids with a teacher to allow for the social distancing. It's not every teacher has 5 and we're overwhelming the system. In a middle school, we'd be talking 15 to 30, and in a high school, 20 to 40. But what it does is it allows us to bring in these small groups of 5 or less, and honestly, it allows us to get kids in small groups, because one of the things with respect to the work that we've done with Dr. Melnick is they've made a real clear path. In the press release that was sent out last week, in addition to, there was a quote from Dr. Prager, there was a quote from Dr. Melnick. There also was their idea, their outline of how a district in Clark County moves to hybrid. Okay, so what we're looking at is starting on September 21st, the week of the 21st, and it is the 21st. That week, the county health will publish where are we with respect to moderate, high, low case transmission rates. We start the week of the 21st because the week of the 21st is 2 weeks after Labor Day weekend. If there are increased numbers because of get-togethers over Labor Day, that will have been teased out by that report that we get the 21st. But if we are in a moderate range, the 21st, then if we remain in moderate the 21st, the 28th, the 5th, the 12th, that allows us then to move into a hybrid situation, and we would start in hybrid in just K through 5. And this is not an Evergreen idea, this is a county idea. This is what's been published from Dr. Melnick and Dr. Prager And we had talked about in our MOU conversations with EEA as well. So it's not, I've gotten a lot of emails talking about this is my science or it's my idea. There hasn't been anything we've done without conversations with the county health department, which has been informed by the state health department, which is the science that we are following. That all comes from CDC as well. But my view, and I think our view as a district, is that it'd be very difficult to go from no students on campus or just some students with special needs being served on IEPs to go from very few students on campus to an elementary of maybe 250 students on campus, or to a middle school of 400 students on campus or 500 students on campus. If we're talking hybrid, it's every other day, or a high school of 800 or 900. It's our view that within the guidelines presented, the science presented from the Department of Health, OSPI, and the governor's office, we do have the ability to bring in small groups. And then as we move through these weeks of moderate activity, if we are in moderate, we then have the ability to add a few more. You got to have 5 kids before you can add 10 kids, have 10. And you got to have 10 before you can have 15. And honestly, nothing we do is about anything but serving our students. I've said it repeatedly. We don't exist in our jobs if students aren't in our school district. We are here to help our students. And I don't think anybody that's watching or anybody that will watch would argue against the idea that students safely, in the right numbers, appropriately, following the guidelines on campus is anything that we wouldn't support having happen. So it's really about serving kids. And I was asked by the Columbian, if you have only 30, 50 kids on site, why do you need to have all of the teachers on site? And my simple response really is, if a child is identified as having a need through these student engagement teams and they want to participate, but their teacher isn't there to serve them, how are we providing equal access to our students in our district? It's important to me. That's why we made sure, even though in these financial, the financial situation we face, we still will be running routes. We still will be transporting students because not everybody can get to school if we don't bus them into school. We need to, I think, provide hope to our students that we will be back, that they can be served. The reviews and the comments and the feelings from the summer school program, when you talk to the people that have done surveys, and the feedback they got was just, it was a great experience to have kids back on campus again, and it was a great experience for our teachers to be able to teach our kids. So it's really trying to slowly bring kids in appropriate numbers, build a little bit on there so that by the time we get to the point where we potentially could be in a hybrid situation, it's not like we're bringing in 450 new middle schoolers. Maybe we're up to 100 by then, spread out over the school in morning and afternoon sessions. It gives us the opportunity to have our protocols in place in small groups before we have large groups start attending. So I felt it was important for people to hear transparently what has happened. I feel like both sides have bargained in good faith. I think there's no question that we bargained in good faith from the perspective of accepting their proposal. And I think it's well within the rules afforded EEA for their exec to do what they did. And we are going to just continue to work to make that happen. We, again, like I mentioned, we'll meet on Thursday. But for me, if there's anything people can take away, and it's really what I've been saying since last fall when we started to do trainings around kids, we need to make sure that we're educating our kids the best way we possibly can. I feel tremendous about the work that went into the remote learning 2.0 plan, that the teaching and learning program. I mean, there's so many curriculum specialists. There's so many folks that were part of that. They relied on feedback from our teachers, our staff. Our teaching staff is great, and there's no question about that. Somebody said to me, We have a great staff. In one of the emails, I agree with that. We do have a great staff. I have absolutely no doubt about that. I think that we have a tremendous opportunity ahead of us this fall, and we, without question, will follow the protocols, and we will do our best to follow the decision tree guidelines and bring students in that have needs that have been identified and serve them in school. And with that, I think that's all I have to say in my superintendent's report.
Thanks, Mike. Do any of the board members have any questions or comments for Mike right now at this point?
I do.
Hey, Vic.
I just wanted to acknowledge that we've had some questions on that people who are listening have, and I'm just wondering if there's someone or multiple people that can answer some of these questions. I mean, some we may not have the answers to, but
We don't usually have a superintendent's report with the Q&As afterward. Perhaps we can have him take the questions and address them offline, unless
well, they're
Congress
not.
shares
Some
them.
of them are anonymous.
Yeah, I think what we could do is we could look at the questions and answers. We've been videotaping, doing videotaped messages, honestly, pretty routinely. If you go to our Facebook page right now, you'll see a tremendous one that was done by Jay Buno just the other day. There'll be a new one here in the next week or so on PPE and what does it look like in a school. We've done webinars on opening the plan. We've posted these, we'll post this. So we'll take the questions and answers and we'll videotape responses to that, not tonight, but we can do that ASAP and put answers up on those. I haven't looked at the questions and answers, but you're right, Rob, we don't take questions and answers during superintendent report. But we will. I think if nothing else, you know, we have, and I really believe we are transparent. And that's why in some respects, it's unfortunate that we can't get together and have meetings together, but we've had many, many more viewers in these plans, in these meetings online than what we would typically have when we have them on site. And so I see we've got 200 and almost 300 people watching right now. And the webinar that was done on the 17th and then pushed out to the community, which we had to push out to the community to meet the timelines of OSPI, was viewed by over 13,000 people in our community. My guess, I'm going to go on a limb and say my guess is that wasn't a number of people watching it over and over and over again. There might have been some, but that's a lot of viewership. Absolutely, we'll look at these questions and respond to them.
Mike, you make a good point on the about us being virtual, and I'm trying to remember. I think we had even after school closed in March, we might have had one meeting that until the governor's proclamation shut us down, that we were in the boardroom and we social distanced. And I think it was before the mask requirement because it was in March. But I think that this board would prefer definitely for us to meet in person. And I think that that's something that's been kind of, you know, we've been questioned about that, about why we're not meeting in person, but then we're expecting people now to meet on site. And, you know, I think that all 6 of us would love the opportunity to have a meeting in person, and we would willingly do so if the Open Public Meetings Act didn't have that proclamation under it. And so I think we're trying to work that out because we feel the need that that we would like to meet in person. I know that, you know, when I think about, we had canceled some of our trainings and things through WASDA have been canceled and being remotely. And I feel as a learner, it's going to be more difficult for me to have that time when I could get so much more out of it in person. So I know that this is very difficult, and this is something that we've never faced before as a school district or a community or as a world. And I know that there's mixed feelings and emotions about, you know, going back to work and getting kids back in the classroom. But I keep telling myself, and I keep hearing it from people in the community, their kids need help, and we have to figure out a way to serve our students. And if it's one at a time, and we recognize that needs to get back in the classroom. You know, that's what tugs at me every day, is thinking about those kids that don't have support at home, are falling behind. And, you know, our job as an education system is to find those kids and help them. And I think that's, you know, if we do it slowly, we do it safely, I think it can be done. I've seen examples in workplaces where people can social distance, they can work in the same office, they can wear masks, and it can be done. And we've got to think about our students first, and we've got to get to those that have need.
And on your point around the meetings, Julie, I actually reached out to our district attorney this week and asked specifically, like, what happens if we actually just have a meeting? You know, like, what, I'm not saying any of you wanted to necessarily do that. And I understand we have somebody that works in the prosecutor's office that's on the board, might not necessarily want to violate the law on, but it is a gross misdemeanor, apparently, under one of the RCWs. I don't necessarily know what that means. Because I think sometimes you do just have to lead by doing things that might not be what's accepted. I don't think I want to put any of you in a position of having to commit a gross misdemeanor by getting together. So it's unfortunate, but I've heard it from each and every one of you every meeting or every time we've talked outside of it, is that you want nothing more than to be able to get together and have it's the governor's declaration that's not letting that happen, but it's also the governor's guidelines that do allow us to serve kids.
Well, yeah, and I think it matches up with the county phases and what we've seen now with things that have been opening up. You know, when we were at the stay home, stay healthy order in phase 1, it was a little bit different, but then as phase 2 opened, and then we put a pause on phase 2, but as we're gradually, you know, moving out of that, hopefully numbers will stay lower. We're going to keep paying attention to that. But I know that we can I know we have the protocols, and I know that people will start learning more about those. But I think if we follow the protocols, that we can get kids back in the classroom safely in small numbers. All right. Anyone else have anything they would like to ask Mike, or should we move on to the budget?
I guess just a comment about my resistance to us taking and answering these questions in the superintendent report is that the vast majority of them, 19 now, are about items that will be addressed in the MOU. And they need to be addressed over the bargaining table in the MOU. This is my point of view. But they do keep coming in, because now we're up to 20. I don't know if there's a back end way to capture them. So I've been copying them into a little thing, and I'll email that to you when we're done.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Thanks, Rob. Okay. All right. So I guess we'll move on to the public hearing, which is about the proposal for the 2020-21 Evergreen School District 114 budget. This is our second reading. At this time, I will turn it over to Mike to give us the presentation on the budget.
So I'm going to try to share a screen here and see if I do this right. You see that, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm because I think when I tried to do this as an actual video, like sharing it, it didn't work right. So I'm going to leave it like this and hopefully just click through these slides. The first slide that you see outlines the expected beginning fund balance that we have of approximately 27 million, our total expenditures and revenues, and our total ending fund balance of about 23.7 million. So what you're approving tonight, actually at this point I'm just explaining the budget, but what you'll ultimately approve will be an expenditure level of various funds. But with respect to the general fund budget, our beginning balance of about 27 million comes down to about 23.7. Now that was a budget that was built in the spring. And I feel like it really, much of it was done before we started to get the kind of language from OSPI and the legislature around the potential reductions that we might, well, I wouldn't say reductions, just the state shortfall. The state has about a little less than $9 billion shortfall. And we had anticipated them coming together for some sort of a special session and giving us some sorts of ideas around what type of cuts we might find. They ended up not having a special session, so we're kind of left to just kind of see what's going to happen. We had budgeted for a enrollment decline of about 2%. The things that are making districts nervous right now are the kindergarten numbers that we see enrolling and the numbers of families that we've gotten requests potentially homeschool or intent to homeschool. So there's just uncertainty around the enrollment numbers that we're faced with, and it's that as well as transportation. You receive transportation funds when you transport students, and we have a potential to lose up to a half or 2/3 even of the revenue that we receive in transportation, which would be maybe somewhere between $7 and $10 million. So we have a significant concern with respect to revenue. And I would say, I feel like one positive that came when we released the information on our schedule, we did have a lot of families reach back out to us that were considering doing online learning with an online provider, not Evergreen School District, a statewide online provider. That's once they saw our program and what our thoughts were, they felt real good about it, and then they decided to withdraw their intent to leave the district and stay in the district. So we're trying to be, we're trying to answer as many questions and just explain to folks what we're doing and what's different in 2.0 than 1.0 to try to support folks, parents in our district. All that being said, even before all of that, we had budgeted for a decline in our fund balance. The next slide looks at levy rates. You can see from 2017, back in the days before the McCleary fix, that hit in 2019. That's when you see the rates go from $5 a thousand down to $3.24. We passed a technology levy in 19, started collecting that in 20. And our M&O levy rate was frozen at $1.50 in 2019, but then the legislature in 2020 allowed that to float up. I think actually it's the 2019 legislative session that impacted 2020 that now caps levies at $2.50 instead of $1.50. It went to $1.64. Some districts ran supplemental levies. We didn't do that. We felt like we had to work to do rebuilding relationships in the district before we asked the community to do that. The natural increase is at $1.72. So you can see even with the $3.88 in 2021, we're still well below the $5 per thousand we were in 2017. We share with the board the assumptions that went into salary increases by group. You can see what EAA received approximately 3.3% increase. A non-represented staff, certificate and classified, received the CPI of 2.5%. EEA, that was what was settled on with EEA, 2.5%. PSC, large group and office clerical, had 4% salary increases bargained a couple years ago. And then our coaches contract is 2.5% as well. Expenditure activity, how we spend our money. When John Dieter was superintendent of the district, we started to track the activity areas that we spend our dollars in as a district. And so we've updated this every year from really probably 07, 08, 08, 09 forward. But we look at what did we spend in 04, 05 in various activity areas. What were our actual expenditures in 18, 19, and then what are our budgeted expenditures? And the things that I usually look at is the teaching and teaching support. Teaching support would include things like libraries, counselors, security, professional development, curriculum, things like that. Where we were below 70% in 04, 05, we're now just below 73% in 2021. So that roughly 3% increase on a $390 million budget is well over 10 million. So it's a significant amount of money that's been redistributed through our program. Also, central administration has gone from 6.7 down to about 5.25. So again, 1.5 plus percent, or 1.5% represents probably somewhere around $5.5–6 million less that we're spending at the district office than we would if we were in the same situation. This is just really more than anything else, just informational to share. In the actual budget, I talked about our enrollment, what we had budgeted. You can see we budgeted for approximately 200 less elementary students, 160 less middle school students, and approximately 120 less high school students than we did last year. So we had already built in a little over a 2% enrollment decline into the budget this year. And we won't see Tuesday what that number is, but we will know by Friday what our enrollment number is. And generally, when we have that enrollment number Friday, we in most years can have a really good prediction on what that number is going to be by the end of the year. In this case, in this year, I believe that it's uncertain whether or not what we have in September, how does the pattern this year look like what most other years look like. So we'll just have to kind of keep looking at that. And it's why, our program is important for our kids. It's important not only to have them in school, but it's also important to keep them connected to our school. So it is important what we're doing with trying to serve our students on site in small groups appropriately. This slide talks about how many staff were allocated and what we budgeted for. This is just basic education, not special ed or title or LAP or CTE. So the number is quite a bit lower. It also doesn't include counselors or librarians or academic. No, it doesn't include academic coaches, but it doesn't include. It actually includes teachers, librarians, and counselors as well. It just doesn't include other programs like special ed, CTE, Skill Center, Title, LAP, ELL. So we spent a good amount of time in the last few weeks looking deeply at the budget. 2 weeks ago, I did a PowerPoint presentation that was a little more detailed than this. And outside of that, I had individual meetings with 2 or 1 board member to be able to meet and answer questions. So this is like the 3rd or 4th time that you've seen what we're talking about here. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that to the crowd or anybody that's watching, that we have had further conversations than what you're going to see tonight. Because the next thing I'm going to talk about is there's the F-195, which is the budget document. Then there's the F-195F, which is a 4-year budget outlook. And I'm going to share the next slide that shows what, based upon guesses being made now, what would our fund balance look like over the next 4 years. But you can see that the enrollment drop that we envisioned in this work was only 2.7 over the next 4 years. And honestly, we could double that next week. So it's hard to do 4 year. I mean, it's easy to do a 4-year outlook, but it's hard to have one that's really a good, credible one when literally things can change day to day. You see the revenue growth increases that we had over the years, a little less than 1%. I think revenue growth of approximately 1% is probably fair. And then it's going to be very important if our revenue does only grow by 1% a year in that time frame, that we keep our expenditures to that level of expenditure increase as well. As you can see on the next slide, our fund balance in 2021, if we hit the budget, ends up even lower. We as a school district do have a board policy that talks about a 5% reserve. I feel like that's appropriate. I feel like our district brings money in and we spend our money on the program. We don't build large reserves. We really haven't done that. And we've really never done that. I think if you compared Evergreen's reserve with the reserves of, say, any other large district on a per student basis or on just a dollar basis or a percentage of budgeted expenditures, I think our fund balance isn't alarmingly low, but it's certainly not alarmingly high like some places you might see. I think it's appropriate, but I just want to make this point. If we were to see a 10% enrollment decline, that'd be approximately 2,400 students. 2,400 students at $9,000 a student is a little over $21 million. So it's actually about 21.5 million, and that's before talking about transportation revenue declines. So the things that we've been doing to try to get ahead of what we might be finding with respect to the furloughs. In our EEA agreement, we had a section that allowed, if enrollment decline was significant, for folks to take an incentive to retire in the month of September. We've frozen certain positions. We've accepted resignations, and typically we don't let people out of their contracts after at this point in time, but with the uncertainty, we've done that. We're trying to do as many things as we can to get ahead of what might be with us. And I talk about transparency. When we've had to go through cuts in 09-10 and 11-12, Rob was a part of the committees that did that. We started those committees in like November of the year before the September that the cuts actually would exist. When we went through budget cuts in just a couple years ago in the spring, we had forums in the spring at each of our high schools. We listened to our staff and our community. We then made adjustments to our plan and came back and presented a second time to everyone. Ultimately approved a budget in August and operated it in the fall of 1920. We're in a situation like no other right now, where we literally a week before school starts aren't certain of our enrollment. We're not certain of what the legislature might do. We're not certain what our transportation revenue is. There's so much uncertainty, and it's very difficult to be transparent with your community, particularly when every day that you wait to make a decision is one less day that you might be able to save money and save other reductions in the future. So it's a very unsettling time. And as I mentioned earlier with the classified furloughs, I feel very pleased that we were at least able to continue with medical benefit access for our staff, and then they will qualify for unemployment. But it's just it's not a good time. I want to really quickly just mention the other funds. We have a capital projects fund. People see us post on Facebook. I think there's a post on some fields at Union today. We continue to open build schools. In 2018, we passed a bond. Those funds can't be used in any way to help support the shortfalls that we're dealing with in the general fund. We continue to move forward with our projects. The reality is kids will come back to school at some point. They're going to come back to school at some point. We continued with our curriculum adoptions, Fontes and Pinnell. We continue with our middle school reading adoption. Kids are going to come back, and they're going to use the materials. They're going to use these beautiful schools that we're building. Extremely appreciative of our community, what they've done. You see a number of projects going on across the county, across the district, and they're doing a tremendous job. And we will be at a point when everyone comes back, and our kids will be able to use those fields, and they will be able to learn in those new classrooms. And they will be able to work in those new libraries, and it's going to be great. It isn't today, but it is coming. The Capital Projects Fund is where we spend those dollars, and we've budgeted for about a $300 million expenditure in the 2021 school year. Significant amount of projects continue. The Transportation Vehicle Fund is the fund where we buy school buses. We buy a school bus, the state gives us money to replace it. When the bus is off the depreciation schedule, we buy it and replace it. So we still will buy buses this year. Again, these funds can't be used to support anything other than the purchase of school buses. We have an ASB fund. The students pass the budget for them. I mean, the board ultimately passes the budget, but it's actually the students that are setting the budget. And The final budget is the debt service fund. When we pass a bond, like when you buy a house, you have a principal and interest payments, a mortgage payment schedule. Our debt service fund is our mortgage payment schedule on bonds we sell to build our schools. And we levy the taxpayers an amount to make the payments on those bonds every year. And this budgeted amount for this particular year is a little over $36 million. And the last thing I want to mention about this budget is we have an obligation. The state requires us to make a statement on how we spend our MSOC monies. Our MSOC monies are materials, supplies, and operating cost dollars. They're not salary related dollars. They're dollars to pay for utilities, insurance, supplies, materials, things like that. And we have to acknowledge publicly how much money we receive from the state and how much money we spend in the state. So we receive approximately $28,658,000, and we're spending about $37.2 million. So we have to acknowledge that we're spending more than what we're receiving. If we weren't doing that, we have to explain how those dollars are being spent to support the educational program. So I'm doing that as a requirement of the state. And with that, I will conclude my presentation and stop sharing this screen.
All right, thanks, Mike. All right, so at this time, we're going to take questions and comments from the audience about the budget only, because this is during the budget public hearing. Lori, is there anybody that has a question that raised their hand for a question about the budget?
I saw a question in the Q&A about the CARES funds.
Oh, okay. Do you want to speak to that,
So
Mike?
yeah, I'll just respond to that. We budgeted for the CARES funds. That's part of the budget. Within the revenue, our district received approximately I think they've given us 90% of the funds so far. I think about 4.5 to 4.6 million in revenue. So that's included in the revenue. The money is being spent on things such as a device purchase, PPE. When we run a food service program, there is a negative impact on the district's bottom line with respect to the food service program being impacted by this. So when you look at a food service program, lost revenue or what the program usually supports, we're able to do that as well. So we've budgeted for all of the expenditures and all of the revenues, approximately $4.5 million as part of the budget.
Julie, we do have a question from Katie.
Okay. All right. Is Katie on with us? Katie? Are you there?
We're working on it. Sorry about that.
Sorry, being on my phone, it's much harder to see what's happening.
I can see you, Julie.
Katie, are you there?
Her
Mic is muted.
Still muted, yeah.
Oh, maybe she doesn't realize that, Katie? Is her mic still muted?
I asked to unmute, but I don't show that anything's happening. Sorry.
That's okay.
Here's a second question in the Q&A.
On the budget?
A decrease in, should I just read it?
Yeah, I
Go
see
ahead.
it.
Okay. It reads, if there's any idea on whether any teachers will be laid off due to a decrease in enrollment, and if so, how many teachers do they anticipate or possibly reassigned to other buildings?
So my answer would be that there wouldn't be, our teachers have contracts for the school year. There wouldn't be any teachers laid off as a result of enrollment declines. We had talked with EEA about flexibility of moving, but we typically move staff. I mean, we don't do it willy-nilly, but when we have areas of low class sizes, we have moved staff between buildings every year that I've been in the district. So I would anticipate that there is the possibility for moving or reassigning, but there wouldn't be any layoffs of a certificated staff member based upon our enrollment situation in the 2021 school year.
All right, did we ever get Katie?
We did not.
Okay. Is there anybody else that had raised their hand for a question?
Not at this time.
Okay. Rob, can you check the Q&A and see if there's anything else related to the budget?
I'll let you judge this, Mike. It reads, why are classified staff who provide academic interventions furloughed? Is that a budget question to you?
I mean, I think it's more of a furlough question, but I would say that we will use our staff. We didn't furlough every special ed para or ELL para or title or lap para either. I think it was somewhat based upon the experience, some of the experience we had in the spring. One of the reasons that we've furloughed staff as opposed to laying off staff is having the ability to pivot as we need if we need to bring people back. So it's really kind of a part of that whole process. I would also say that in conversations with the union, they felt it was appropriate to do our layoffs before school had started, because some of our folks may have claimed unemployment prior to the first, and if you come back to work and start, you lose your ability to go back on unemployment. So it's something that might be something beneficial in some situations, but we still have title and lap staff working with kids. We still have ELL pairs working with kids. We still have special ed pairs working with kids. We didn't lay off all of our staff. I think we have maybe approximately 1,150 or something individuals, and about 475 were affected. I do believe that within the first 2 or 3 weeks, we'll probably be bringing back 60, 70 more bus drivers. And as we get into the actual momentum of bringing kids back in smaller groups as well. So as we see the experience, we will react to that and bring folks back as necessary. But one of the things that we will also see as part of that experience is what are our enrollment numbers look like on September 4th.
Okay, this next one is a point of feedback about the ending fund balance chart, asking to change the chart to start at 0 rather than 19 million.
Absolutely, we can do. I mean, if we publish, I don't know that we'll probably, the F195F, the 4-year outlook for me, honestly, if I could give you a 2-week outlook right now, I would be guessing. So a 4-week outlook, I'm not going to publish a 4-year. It wasn't to do anything other than to just show, but we'll make sure we work on fixing that in the future.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, I see one. Could you take a look at that, Mike?
Yeah, I don't think that those are budget questions. But I would say, all I would say about the budget, the reason that we have to speak to the budget tonight is that by law, we have to have approved the budget by August 31st. And I would also just say that the conversations around, well, I'm just gonna leave it at that because we're talking about the budget.
Yeah.
I do have a question, a phone-in question from Jennifer Radican, and I'm going to try to allow her to talk.
Okay.
Jennifer, are you there?
Still shows on mute for her.
She has to unmute on her own.
That's true.
She's not responding.
Is she still showing mute?
Yeah, and all I can do is ask her to unmute, but she's not responding.
Oh, okay.
And now she dropped off, so
Oh, okay.
we don't have any further questions at this time.
Oh, there's a point of feedback that says that it don't have options to unmute on our end during this present mode. There should be, well, if you're on your phone, well, I just don't know about this software. I know the controls are different.
They were able to, 2 weeks ago, we had people chiming in and having conversations. So there's
Yeah, I think when
something going
Lori
on
brings
tonight.
them in, when Lori brings them into
Yeah,
our mode, our screen instead of the
If you're,
participant screen, then they become able to unmute.
if you're on the phone, and you tap your screen, there should, once they enable your mic, you should see a control there, is my thinking. If it's on this desktop software, it's always in the lower left.
Okay, well, she's dropped off
Okay.
completely.
so one of the comments we did just get said, press and hold the space key to temporarily unmute.
Mhm.
But the only way that we will be able to hear the person is because they are actually being brought in as part of our, what do you call this?
Meeting?
Yeah, well, yeah, but
The
the way, so because
presenters.
because we can then see them once we bring them in, which then allows them to unmute and speak on this. So not everybody
and
has
the
that
phone
option
call.
just to unmute and start talking. They actually have to request to be brought
Yes.
into this.
I can see on our list of callers that Katie is one of the invitees, and there's a phone number there too.
I can promote her to a panelist and see what happens.
Well, and I'm reading a comment here that says iPhone users have to swipe to the right for their unmute button.
I don't.
Well, should we open it up for board questions and comments?
See if I can, I think I also had the question about the CARES Act. I think that was answered. No, I'm good.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Julie. Mike, do you think the disbursements from the CARES Act are covering the costs of PPE and extra electronics and things we need to do remote learning? Or is it costing more than what the feds have provided?
I think that it's a good question. I mean, it's like short term versus long term, right? So when you think about what we're having to deal with on an ongoing basis with respect to the PPE, I think in year one there's a chance that it would cover what we're doing, but I don't think in the long term, because it's not something that's a renewable source, right? And we don't have necessarily a path, right? I mean, when do any of us foresee us being in a position of not having to be in this mode with respect to, unless there's a vaccine, which, you know, some people say there may or they may not get a vaccine. So I would think in the short term, our situation, there's other districts that are in more difficult situations than we are. I think in the short term, it's probably helping. Long term, the situation will overwhelm any money that we get from the feds.
And the thing that I've been hearing statewide is that there is nothing in the legislation that prevents the legislature from doing what they did with trust lands funds in the past and clawing it back, is what they call it, is that they structure things so that the amount of money that came from that source is a reduction in the total budget line in the following year. Did I describe that right?
Yeah, I think that that's fair.
And that's still kind of on the table officially, but it has to have legislative action. So you kind of brace for that.
All right, so no other questions. There's nobody else, Lori, that has tried to call in?
Not at this time.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? You got something, Rob?
Oh, no, sorry.
Oh,
I just,
okay. Sorry, I'm having a hard time because I can't see all of you at the same time. All right, well then we'll go ahead and to a motion to approve Resolution 6382, our 2020-21 Evergreen School District budget adoption.
Director Grunwald motions to approve Resolution 6382, the 2020-2021 Evergreen School District budget.
Second.
Director Bradford seconds.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. It's an aye for me. Victoria?
Aye.
Rob?
Aye.
Ginny?
Aye.
Rachel?
Aye.
All right, it's passed. We have our budget resolution for the next school year. Thank you, Mike, for your work on that. I know it's not been easy by any means putting this year's together.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you to Tammy Gassaway, who worked in the district for I think over 30 years, and for the last several with me on budget. She was a tremendous coworker. She was a tremendous friend. And she did wonderful work for our school district. One of these people that no one has any idea who they are. They just come to work every day and get the job done. And I also want to thank Jennifer Jacobson, who's new in the district as our Director of Accounting and Purchasing, and also is taking on some of the work that Tammy was doing around the budget. She continues to help me on a daily basis, and she's backfilled some of the work that Tammy has done. So thank you to Jennifer, and thank you to Tammy, and thank you to countless other managers and people that put this together. Our HR department, Cindy Madsen in HR, the CERT personnel folks. I mean, so many people, so much work, and they do a great job. So thank you to all of them.
Thank you, Mike.
Next, sorry, I'm having issues, as you can probably tell. All right, next up is board comments. So at this time, any comments by members of the school board?
I think we're not doing as much as we would normally be doing, but I do want to give credit to our central office. Mike kind of alluded that a lot of times they're the ones nobody knows about, but they've been working from the get-go on all of this, coming into work, and in some ways they've been our guinea pigs on how to make things work right with the PPE and all of that. And I just appreciate that they've been coming in and working so hard on getting us ready to go. Because this is a new situation for everybody. And so I just wish that we could let them know how much we appreciate all the work they've done all summer long.
Thanks, Vic.
I have to second that and really agree. I want to make the comment that I have captured and emailed all of the questions that were not answered off to Mike, and continued to do that after his report was finished too. So we've got all these questions preserved for answering later, just to make sure of that. And, I have been reading all the emails that have come in, all of them. I think we've all been reading all of them. And we'll read some more in a few minutes, won't we? And what makes me thoughtful about it is how caught up we all are in the grief of this particular problem of what do we do when people don't feel safe. And here we are in an organization, right, where the job is to help students feel safe so that they can take a risk academically or socially and grow. So that their parents can feel comfortable putting them in school to get their education. And so that we can move forward, hopefully with a little better, gosh, the moment is causing me to forget my words too. But it's the idea that this has all come as a shock to every person, from the smallest, youngest child all the way to the governor of the state, and further, it's a global pandemic. People are pointing that out in the emails and the comments here. It's a global trauma. I'll put it that way. And if you've been watching things like the the state superintendent, Chris Reichdahl, and the way that he positions things when he talks about it and makes his videos on YouTube, is this great plea asking people to extend grace to those who have the most work to do. Now, if there's a plea to the public at this point, to parents and students, teach everybody, could we extend grace to one another? Could we remember that everybody involved here got into education, didn't do it for the money or the fame. We did it because we want to help kids. We recognize that the wider community is important. And my hope is that we'll work as hard as we can, but also that we'll rest when we need it, so that we can continue working as hard as we can to bind this community and help those students and children to grow into a life of hopefulness. And I think now it's been harder than ever in my lifetime, or perhaps even in living memory, to see our way out of it. And I want to commit, I guess, to helping to see our way out of it. There are hundreds of ways, I think, that I could respond to the pressures and stressors. And I was trying to think of what to say in this moment. So maybe I just say thank you and recognize that this is hard. This is really difficult work. It's difficult waiting at any level for the entity or the institution or the person at the next higher level to make a decision. It's really hard. And I hope to extend that grace. I hope that people will do that for each other, because I believe that this is going to stay hard for quite a while. And if we can do that, I think we can be really successful this year, and we'll bring some hope to some kids, all the kids. That's my comment for this meeting.
Thanks, Rob.
I would
Jenny,
also,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Rachel.
thanks, Julie. I would also just like to thank everyone who has sent emails and made phone calls to us. We really appreciate hearing your feedback and hearing your concerns, and we do take them to heart. And we read, like Rob said, every email that we are sent and consider it. So thank you for everyone sending those. I also wanted to share a little bit that I got to see firsthand how pickup and drop off went for academic camp at least at Illahee, because my daughter got to participate in that as an incoming first grader. And the process for dropping off went really smoothly. Everyone was really great at observing 6 feet of social distancing. I heard from her teacher that everyone did great with masks, even these 6-year-olds, which shocked me, to be honest, because I can't, I think I said months ago, masks just won't work for these little kids, but they did great in these 2-hour chunks of time wearing their masks, from what I hear from her teacher and the assistant. Pickup went really smoothly. Again, I saw the social distancing, I saw the masks. I didn't hear of anyone getting sick. I don't know if you know, Mike, if we had any COVID cases from the academic camps that were going on across our district, but I don't think we did. And so I need to say that in those 2 weeks, 4 days a week, 2 hours, my daughter learned more than I was able to teach her in the entirety of the 2.5 months that we did distance learning. She came so far in these last 2 weeks, and that is because her teacher is magical. And really, in reality, it's because her teacher is skilled and taught, highly educated, and knows how to teach young children, something that I totally don't know how to do. But it reinforced for me how important it is to get our kids back into the classrooms, even in these small groups, even if it's just for those students who need it the most, because of how much impact our teachers really do have on our students, the teachers and the staff, the assistants. It's, as you know, I don't know if I'm an average parent or on the lower end of the ability to teach or the higher end of the ability to teach my students, but I have heard from a lot of parents that teaching their kids at home is so hard. And I think it will still be hard even with Remote 2.0, even with all the improvements we've made and our team has worked so hard to make. I think it's still going to be hard. So I just have to say this experience of the academic camp has really reinforced for me how important it's going to be to get our kids into school as soon as we can in these small groups. And so I think that's a great plan. And I really support us trying to do that in a safe way for everyone. And I think our academic camp was good proof that we can do it safely for everyone.
Great, thanks, Rachel. Appreciate that feedback. Jenny, you got anything?
I guess I just want to reiterate what everybody else has said. We have received and read all the emails. Actually, let me take that back because I think we've gotten about 150 today. So I haven't been able to get through all of them yet, but I am working through them. And we hear the comments, we hear the concerns. One of my biggest takeaways, though, from a lot of the emails that we have gotten is everybody is scared, and we get that. We all are. These are unprecedented times, but a lot of the concerns that have been presented in a lot of these emails are going to be concerns that we're still going to have as we start phasing our county open. That is why we need to practice these safety skills that we're being told to do, because once we get to a certain phase, the next phase, we are going to start opening our schools up. The entire state is going to start opening up schools. We're still going to have to wear masks. There's still going to be a lot of these potentials out there. And I think, being a parent in Evergreen and as a school board director, I'm proud to be an Evergreen. And, we are Evergreen. And as a member of this Evergreen family, it's kind of harsh or disheartening for me to hear a lot of everybody else is doing it this way, so we should be doing it that way also. Because we are known for setting the bar higher and for putting in whatever we need to do to make sure that we are helping everybody in our community. So it's kind of, it's kind of sad to really, to hear everybody want just us to be like everybody else. And I know that we don't want to bring everybody back into school. Not everybody's coming back into school. And that's why we're trying to do it this way, so that we can start leading and getting our kids back. We have parents, we have students, we have families that these kids are getting left behind, and we really need to be able to get to them. in a safe way. And I don't think that anybody is saying that we want people to do things in an unsafe way. And there was concerns about violations and what if people aren't following the rules. And I hope that, you know, Mike and your team, you can address those in our Q&A also about, you know, is there a way for someone to anonymously, you know, file a claim or a, you know, not a grievance, but just to inform someone that someone else isn't practicing, because we all need to be safe and we all need to keep everybody around us safe. And that's the only way that we're going to be able to do this. And I hope that we can eventually get to a point where we can all come to an agreement so that we can get back and start getting, you know, our classrooms ready and our kids ready.
Great, thanks, Jenny. Appreciate that. And I think I'd just like to follow up, you know, echo the thank yous. There's been a lot of work that's gone into the planning for 2.0 and the plan overall. You know, I think we want an improved distance learning model, and I think that our team has really put forth the effort and are prepared to move forward with that. I think that there is a lot of, you know, change that's going to have to happen in the next several weeks and months, and you know, it's not easy. I can tell you it's not easy working firsthand in an environment where you have to social distance and kind of be that person that kind of leads that charge in buildings and making sure that people are following protocols, but it can be done. People can be safe, and you know, and I just want to reiterate that it's going to not be easy. We're going to have to work hard, but I think that working hard and working together on the outcome of our children is what's in the best interest for all of us in our community. So that's what we're here for, and just hope that everybody keeps that in mind as we move forward in these next several weeks. And I am super excited that the school year is starting next Tuesday. It'll be good, and I want to say to see kids back in school, but that's not necessarily going to be the case. But just to hear about students learning, I know that Gail and her team in community relations did such a good job of outlining the things that were happening even when students are learning remotely. And so I'm hoping that we can capture all of that and show our community all the good things that are happening within our schools. Okay, so is there anything else? All right, so with that, we will move to future agenda items. I know that we have a whole docket of things that we've kind of put on the back burner because we haven't been able to get to some of those stuff. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that we want to add at this point.
Just not to forget that the work that we need to do on the equity policies. Been kind of,
yeah, I think that is we're probably going to schedule a separate workshop for that coming up in the next several weeks, so we can go through some of the equity audit conversation.
And then also
some of the things that came out of.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially the courageous conversation seminars that I think 3 of us were able to attend last week. This time last week.
Yes.
Yeah,
I think
really good.
They were really, joyfully difficult, and definitely worth waiting on developing the policy to receive that instruction. Definitely. And then also that WASDA's Board of Distinction application still has, in spite of it all, still has the same deadline. And if we want to be about applying for that, we're going to have to take some time in the next month.
Okay, so we'll have to probably talk about that. All right, anything else? Future agenda items? Okay, so at this time we're going to move into citizen comments. These are citizens who wish to speak to the school board. We are taking oral comments. I believe 5 citizens have signed up to provide oral comments at tonight's meeting. When I call your name, wait for your mic to be unmuted by the Zoom moderator, and we're hoping that this will work out. I think we've got some technical tips in the last segment. please ensure or before beginning your comments, tell us your name and your address. And each person's comment should be limited to 3 minutes. Lori, do we have the folks ready to go?
Yes, we're ready to unmute Mary Elias.
Okay, yeah, Mary is Elios is up first. Mary, can you hear us?
Okay. We have to make our panelists.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We can.
Yes.
Hello.
Hey, hi.
Good.
My name is Mary Elias, and I live at 9605 Southeast Butte Avenue, and my neighborhood school is Ellsworth. I'm also an academic interventionist with the school district. I'm going to address Mike Merlino's directive that staff go back to the buildings by September 21st. My friend who teaches special ed in the district has to choose between paying $2,000 a month for her 2 kids in childcare or taking FMLA. She has chosen to stay home with her kids rather than expose them to COVID. She will need a long-term sub, and the district wants to provide opportunities for kids with IEPs to learn at school. But even in the best of times, we have a hard time filling those special ed positions. So my friend, who has demonstrated that she is fully capable of managing her teaching from home and her school-age children, will sit with her talents unused while her students get no or piecemeal services. I'm not an administrator, but the logic of this forced choice sure falls apart faster than an IKEA coffee table. I'm terrified to go back to school because I have a high-risk health condition with regards to contracting COVID. I can't afford to take leave, so I'll be putting myself at risk of death by going back to the classroom. I regularly go above and beyond for this district and my students, but this is a line I didn't anticipate I'd have to cross. I'd like to posit that perhaps the time for a white, able-bodied, cisgender, wealthy male to make life or death decisions for so many people is over. Mr. Merlino's decision to force us back into the buildings does not align with any area districts. I ask that the board direct their employee, Mike Merlino, to allow work site flexibility while we teach online. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mary.
Julie, you're muted.
Thanks, sorry. All right, next is Michelle Haberkamp. Lori, do we have Michelle on the line? Lori?
We're working on that right now. We're asking for her to unmute.
Oh, okay, great.
She's unmuted. She should be there. Michelle?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi there.
Michelle, go ahead when you're ready. Just tell us your name and address, please.
My name is Michelle Haverkamp. My address 15501 Northeast Peralt Drive. My neighborhood school is Burton. I have lived and worked in this school district for over 25 years. And I am currently an occupational therapist working with early childhood students. And they are the most vulnerable population. I work with medically fragile. And these are students who cannot do anything by themselves. They require an adult to facilitate their needs for learning simple routines, for feeding themselves, all of those sorts of things. They did attend ESY. It was very much a struggle for them to wear a mask. That requires then an adult to facilitate them putting it back on, which is a risk factor every time another person touches a student's mask. You're putting students in situations where they basically don't understand what is going on with the restrictions, and it is putting the staff at undue risk. I am advocating at this time that you promote safety for all of the staff as well as the student needs. I have worked all of the spring from March forward, and I also worked ESY virtually, and I was able to provide all the services necessary for my students where they continued to make progress. And I would advocate that this would decrease the risk by allowing therapists to do their teletherapy services that are part of our licensed requirements, and that it would limit the vulnerable exposure to the students, and it would limit the safety risk to the staff. At this time, I would ask the board to move forward with safety measures that protect everyone and allow that therapists to work in teletherapy practices, which they are supporting 16 hours of training for beginning today. Therefore, it is a sound and valid method, and it should be continued throughout the entire pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate your comments. Next is Jenny Bradley. Lori, do we have Jenny on the line?
On that right now.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can.
My name is Jenny Bradley. I live on 30th Avenue in Vancouver, 98665. I'm a first grade teacher and a member of the EEA Equity Team and Executive Board. 1 week from today is the first day of school, and we still do not have an MOU agreement that puts the health, safety, and lives of our students and staff first. Although Superintendent Merlino provided many welcome new details tonight, last week the MOU presented was overwhelmingly rejected because it did not, or it poorly addressed many serious safety issues. The MOU was rejected because it unnecessarily endangered the health, safety, and lives of students, staff, and our community by unnecessarily forcing hundreds of staff and students to work on site every day while providing remote instruction that can be safely provided as well, if not better, from safe remote work sites. The MOU was not approved because it did not address or have language regarding any of our specialized educators, such as ELL, SPED, ECE, Title I, LAP, SLPs, librarians, counselors, nurses, PE, and music teachers. The MOU was rejected because it did not provide adequate PPE training, testing, contact tracing, safety accommodations and protocols, HVAC system, and building upgrades that would keep our students and staff safe when on site. There were at least a dozen other safety and working and learning condition issues that were not addressed at all or very poorly in the MOU, such as metrics and details for students returning in small groups of 5 or less, then 5 or more, metrics for transitioning to hybrid model, detailed quarantine and safety plans and procedures for when students, staff, or household members are suspected or confirmed COVID positive, adequate accommodations for staff with high-risk family members, or adequate procedures for violations of safety protocols, and much more. If the governor's proclamation deems it unsafe for this board, a small group of responsible, respected adults who can be expected to follow all safety guidelines, to meet in person for your small group 2 to 4 hour meetings, please do not force educators and families to go into similar unsafe conditions that are deemed unsafe for you and your fellow board members to meet under. The fact that all of our neighboring Southwest Washington school districts, Camas, Battleground, Washougal, Ridgefield, and Vancouver are all implementing COVID MOU agreements that put safety first and provide greater safety protections for their students and staff means that we have a significantly increased likelihood that a local outbreak or recent death of a student, staff, or family member will come from Evergreen Public Schools and their decision to knowingly and needlessly endanger the health and lives of our students, staff, and community. Are we really willing to play politics with lives and risk an outbreak or deaths because we refuse to take similar safety precautions as our neighboring school districts? The clock is ticking. School starts next week. Please use your power and influence to facilitate getting an MOU agreement that puts student, staff, and community safety first so that we can all focus our time, effort, and resources on providing the safest, best education that we can for all our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, next up is Kate Barrett. Lori, do we have Kate on the line?
Kate, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Kate. Go ahead and give us your name and address when you're ready.
Okay, my name is Kate or Catherine Barrett. I am a, and my address is 7937 North Hurst Street, Portland. I teach at Columbia Valley in elementary. I teach ALC, and I'm also a member of the EEA Executive Board. I represent the special education, all the special educators. I wanted to speak about why I chose to vote down the MOU. I think I worked the academic camp. I'm a big proponent for students with special needs being able to go back. I thought that I got to substitute at ESY too. I thought both programs were very well run. I was very impressed with the safety procedures. I agree with what Rachel said in her comments that check-in was great. Kids wore masks. I've been very, very impressed. What I worry about the most is at the same time as we start bringing small groups of students into the building to also have full building staffs. I think that we would be better off when we bring our first group, and probably a pretty vulnerable group. Unfortunately, the students that probably need to be in person most, also sometimes, I know my students with special needs, they're also at risk in certain ways, whether it be their immune system, their understanding of procedures, things like that. But I really feel confident that I can keep them safe. But if we had an outbreak, I think that it would be because there was too many adults in my building. I think that, and I don't think it would be anything that adults were doing wrong. I think, we're all human. I think we make mistakes sometimes. And, I as a teacher, I get sort of tired of feeling like we're blamed when kids aren't getting their needs met. There's so many other things that in our society. I mean, as soon as adults could go to restaurants, and as soon as we started opening all around the country, numbers went way up. But if we were able to bring the students back without having all of the teachers there, we would, I think, like at the academic camp and at ESY, we'd have lower numbers altogether total. And I think that a lot of the teachers that would prefer to be remote as long as possible because of their own childcare needs, because of their own healthcare needs. I mean, we've done surveys through the EA. We find it's a pretty high population between childcare, healthcare, or health needs, and and other conditions that make you not want to go in. So let's keep safety by having small groups of students be able to come in with less people there, and let the people that want to do the best they can with remote and are committed to doing remote do that too, and keep the separation between the two. So I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents for that.
Thank you, appreciate that. All right, next is Carrie Newell. Carrie, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead, Carrie. Give us your name and address when you're ready, okay?
Yep, Carrie Newell, and I live at 6310 Northeast 49th Way. I have 2 elementary school kiddos that attend at Crestline, go Lions. And I am also one of the district's 14 early childhood special education teachers. For those unfamiliar with the program, we teach 3 to 5-year-old children with special needs throughout our district. Teaching this population of students has a very unique set of challenges, and luckily we have an incredibly talented and dedicated staff doing this work. In reading information about the district's plan for teaching and learning this fall, I saw that some students would qualify for in-person instruction based on their individual needs, and the health and safety guidelines would be followed. I then discovered that the intent of the district is to have all early childhood special education students receiving some level of in-person instruction on a rotating schedule, as opposed to being individualized per student. This brings some big concerns for me as far as the health and safety of those students and my staff. To give you an idea of why I'm concerned, I had the opportunity to teach a small group of students during extended school year this past summer. Extended school year, I want to clarify, is different than the academic programs that have also been referenced. ESY was at Crestline with our early childhood students. During this school board meeting and another school board meeting, it was implied that students were able to understand health and safety guidelines, practice social distancing, and wear masks. This was not true at ESY for our early childhood education kiddos. My students were unable to maintain socially appropriate social distancing. They needed full adult assistance to wash hands, and despite very intensive instruction, they were unable to wear face masks for longer than a few seconds at best. Due to the intensive needs of, due to the fact that they were unable to wear masks, my staff and I had to wear masks and face shields. Now, due to the intensive needs of our students and their need for very close contact and hand-over-hand assistance for learning necessary skills, we spent a lot of time in very close contact with them in order to teach them. My face shield was grabbed off of my face on a daily basis, and many attempts were made to pull off my mask, thus leaving me vulnerable to germs. The students themselves did not wear masks, so they were vulnerable for spreading germs to each other. I love my students and I love what we do, and I love that we had the opportunity to serve those students in person because they did truly need it, but we were not safe during extended school year. I bring these issues to the attention of the school board because I want you to know the reality of what teaching early childhood special education in person during this pandemic looks like for us, and the risks involved for my fellow teachers and my paraeducators. We can keep those risks lower by limiting the number of students we need to see, by truly basing it on their individual needs and not just a blanket requirement for all ECSE students. We can also keep our risks lower by limiting the number of people coming in and out of our buildings, by requiring all staff to report inside buildings as of September 21st and our classified staff even earlier than that. You are unnecessarily endangering myself, my paraeducators, my students, by increasing the number of potentially infected people we could come in contact with. You are also unnecessarily putting those staff members in danger in case a case of COVID-19 comes through my classroom and I unintentionally spread it throughout the building. All right, thank you, Carrie. Lori, I think that is all of our, for the oral comments, is that correct? Is there anyone else that has, that you have there?
That was everyone on the list, yes.
Okay, so at this time, we did get comments that were submitted by email. We want to thank the community for the 60 email comments that were submitted this evening for tonight's meeting. We also, as mentioned by most of the board members in our board comments, that we received emails in addition to this regarding the reopening, and we have had a chance to review all of those along with the 60 emails that were sent in for tonight's meeting. However, because there were so many, we all have received them, we've all read through them, but we will read some because most of them were around the same topic. So we've chosen some from staff that are all around the same topic, and then some from the community members that we thought we should read that maybe had a different topic to it. So again, thank you for sharing your comments with us, and I will begin reading them. All right, the first one comes from Valerie Blesley, I believe, a teacher at Heritage High School. Dear school board members, I have been a teacher for Evergreen Public Schools since 1993 and am approaching retirement age. I want to reduce my risk of contracting the COVID-19 virus. Since I am in a vulnerable demographic, consequently, I am afraid to be working in the buildings until the pandemic is under control or significantly lessened. Please follow the lead of other districts in Clark County and allow us to decide whether we teach remotely from our homes or from our classrooms. We teachers can be trusted to do our jobs and will be put in the work required to educate the students that we love. Please show your trust by giving us the choice of remotely teaching from home or from our classrooms. All right, the next one comes from Christy Rice,
Julie?
teacher at Heritage High School.
Julie,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you, but we've got
Yep.
a couple of things come in that you're really breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me better? Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
All right, sorry.
Thank you.
I'm gonna hold my phone. I can't get my email to connect on my computer, so I'm doing this on my phone. All right, this one, are we good?
Yep.
Do I need to reread that last one?
Sounds about the same.
Oh, but now oh, there you are. I was gonna say you're frozen, so you might be having connection issues.
Can you see me?
Yep.
Yes, no, yes, no.
Uh-huh. All right, this one comes from Christy Rice, a teacher at Heritage High School. Teachers need flexibility to teach their students what best fits their curriculum and age level of students, and look after our personal children. My son's 11-year-old brain is not developed enough to successfully navigate online school home alone. We are planning a great deal of flexibility for our students. Our teachers deserve the same flexibility. All right, the next one comes from Heather Rice from Covington Middle School. I believe she is an RN at the school. Evergreen Public School Board members, my name is Heather Rice and I've been a nurse for Evergreen Public Schools for 15 years. I'm writing to express my concern about beginning on-site learning on September 21st. From March through June, I volunteered with the Clark County Health Department during doing contact tracing. I spoke with many patients and their families about their illnesses and how they potentially contracted COVID-19. The patients' experiences were horrible. The pain and suffering that they had to endure was difficult to hear at times, especially the parent of a teenager who was admitted to the hospital. I don't want that for our students, staff, or their families to experience this. Clark County continues to have extremely high positive COVID-19 results. So much so that the health department came out on August 20th and stated, we've still been averaging 28 cases a day over the last 2 weeks. Those numbers make our rate of cases too high for us to safely reopen schools to in-person learning. The health department does not recommend in-person learning. On KATU's 5 p.m. news on August 21st, Dr. Melnick from Clark County Health Department stated that the health department has been working with area superintendents and he recommended beginning on-site groups after being in the moderate range of positive COVID-19 cases for 3 weeks and that those 3 weeks would begin after Labor Day. In Mr. Merlino's email on August 18th, he mentioned bringing back students, including students with disabilities and early learners. Those two groups are at such risk. First of all, any person with a medical disability puts them at a higher risk for contracting COVID-19. Then add that to the difficulties around wearing and keeping PPE on at all times, social distancing and hand washing. Also, staff would be exposing themselves to 6 to 20 students per day, depending on what these small sessions would look like. I'm also very concerned about my population of students at Covington Middle School. We have a high percentage of students who are being raised by their grandparents. If these students were to bring COVID-19 home, this could be devastating to their families. I'm asking you to please reconsider reopening the schools for any person learning at this time. And that's signed by Heather Rice. All right, the next one comes in from Keisha Sims from Silver Star. Silver Star parent and educator. Dear school board, on August 12th, 2020, I reached out to Superintendent Merlino about some of my concerns as a parent and teacher in the district. I still have not received a response. I reach out to you now, school board, and implore you to stop and think about the myriad implications of forcing all teachers back into buildings all day, every day, in the middle of a global pandemic. Thank you for your time to consider my thoughts. Teachers need options. We need to be able to access the building and our supplies. Some teachers do want to teach remotely from their classrooms. Some are high risk and should not, and some have children or elders to care for and need physical flexibility. We all have our different situations that would make one mandate for all an impossibility, but we do have at least one thing in common: our love and devotion to children and education. As a teacher and parent of children in our district, I am perplexed how you can address me as a parent and partner in my children's education while simultaneously putting me in a position where I must place my children in full-time daycare. If you mandate that all teachers teach on site, this will place an unfair burden on teachers like me who are also parents. When will my first and third grader do their work? You should not ask me to sacrifice my children's health or education. You said we only exist because of the kids. My kids count too. Please act like you trust and respect your educators as much as you say you do. We will not let our children down. Am I coming in okay? Audio?
Yeah, it sounds
Yes. Oh. All right, this one comes from Heather Heap from Evergreen High School. Good morning. The district's motto is do no harm because we are employees of Evergreen School District. The requirement of all employees reporting to the building on September 21st separates our daughter on an IEP from both her parents. How can the district provide SDI instruction willingly knowing that there is no parent to support the child? 6th grade. Thank you, respectfully. Okay. Sorry. One second, please. I believe that is all. Oh no, it's not all. There's a couple more. All right, this one comes from Sarah Rader. My name is Sarah Rader and my address is 812 Southeast Olympia Drive. I'm the parent of 4 children, who just graduated and 3 within ESD. I have been very involved in my children's schools and have had the opportunity to form wonderful relationships with the dedicated and hardworking teachers at Riverview Elementary, Y East, and Mountain View High School. Recently, I was shocked and frankly disappointed to hear of Evergreen School District's lack of communication with the EEA regarding the location from which teachers will work. It has come to my attention that the district is requiring teachers to be in the school building starting September 21st to remotely teach students. I find this troubling for teachers who are at high risk of complications from COVID, but also for teachers with young children. Teachers with health issues will be faced with the impossible decision of exposing themselves or taking a leave of absence from a job they love to protect themselves. Teachers with young kids will struggle to decide if it's best to increase their kids' exposure through childcare or to leave a job they love. I am also concerned with the kindergarten teachers administrating the WA Kids assessment in person starting September 1st. Wouldn't it be better for the kindergarteners to do this virtually with their teacher, where they are able to actually see their teacher's smiles of encouragement and have it be safer for everyone involved? While other area school districts are offering teachers a choice, Evergreen seems to be digging in its heels. I have come to respect our school district as a leader in our community. I implore you to reconsider giving all the teachers the choice to do what's best for their family and students and allow them to decide if it's safe for them to be in the classroom or if it's better to teach from home. The true measure of any society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members. And that's from a quote from Gandhi. Please let Evergreen School District measure up to a great society. All right, the next one comes from Desiree Helligers, WSU professor. She writes, Evergreen School Board, while COVID numbers are still up in the county and privileged white children are safely accessing classes online, Superintendent Mike Merlino wants children from historically marginalized groups to receive instruction on site. Low-income children, children of color, and children with disabilities would be forced, along with their teachers, to attend on site. These children and their families will be disproportionately at high risk of being exposed to the virus. According to CDC study released August 7th, Black and Hispanic children who contract COVID are respectively 5 and 8 times more likely than their white peers to end up hospitalized with serious complications from the virus. And as for their parents and families, back in July, CDC data indicated, as Mr. Merlino ought to know, that Blacks and Latinos are 3 times more likely to contract COVID than whites and twice as likely to die from it. And that said NYT on 7/5. Moreover, in COVID hotspots, when healthcare is rationed, people with disabilities may come in last for care. And that's from the American Bar Association 5/22. With all due respect, Mr. Merlino, this doesn't look like an equity initiative. It looks like eugenics. Thank you to Evergreen teachers for standing up for public health, equity, justice, and common sense. Okay, so that was a sampling of the 60 emails that we got. We did read and review all of the other comments that were sent in to us. Each board member received them individually and had a chance to review them. So at this time, that ends our regular part of the meeting. We will at this time have a board workshop. I think we're going to take a short recess, and then we're going to reconvene in our board workshop where we will talk about the CTE annual plan. We will have a bond sale planning discussion, a legislative update, and then a board meeting debrief, which we will then follow with an executive session, which will review the performance of a public employee. So at this time, I would call us in a short recess of about 5-10 minutes, and then we'll reconvene. Does that sound good to everyone? Okay, let's take 5 minutes and then let's get back on, okay?
All right.
All right, thank you. All right, is everybody back?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go.
You ready?
Yep.
Okay, well, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present our 5-year plan. And it is reviewed annually as required by RCW. So our strategic plan was first developed in 2010. It was called Vision 2020, and we just hit 2020. So we revised the plan in 2019, and we aligned it with the district, the 2 tenets, viable curriculum and equity. Our mission continues to be to provide our students with competitive, rigorous, and professional skills and abilities to successfully pursue their college and career aspirations. So the requirements, there's the RCW of the annual plan, and I condensed this because the RCW is about 5 pages long. So basically we're looking at alignment with industry standards, having program advisory committees, that we meet exploratory and preparatory standards, that we integrate academics, that we integrate leadership and employability skills, and we extend learning beyond the school day. And then the next part is a program evaluation is required every year of our teachers and program advisory committee. So what we do during early releases is we have teachers at one time working in job alikes across the district, self-assess with a matrix, and then the teachers write an action plan at the next early release, and then I take that and consolidate it into the 5-year plan that you have in your packet. It's first reviewed and approved by our Clark County CTE Consortium, which is our general advisory committee, and we formed this consortium with Vancouver, Battleground, Camas. So it's the 4 largest districts, and then of course it requires school board approval. Tonight is the presentation, and then you'll have a resolution at the next meeting. So part of the plan is looking at our academic course equivalencies, and we now have 60 classes that provide some type of academic equivalency, which is very helpful for our students because it provides an opportunity for them to remain in a career pathway, a CTE pathway, and still earn their academic credits. This year I put in a chart that just shows our current CTE enrollment by program area. So these are the program areas, the 8 across the bottom. The green represents female, the blue male. Our biggest growth area actually has been in computer science and medical science over the last 2 years. Most recently in 2018, our federal legislation was updated to Carl Perkins 5. And even though it was updated in 2018, our state just put it into effect for this coming school year. It requires a comprehensive local needs assessment. And what that means is we're looking at these 5 categories here: progress towards implementation of equal access, evaluation of student performance. And this particular category is not part of our application this year because the state is still defining the indicators. We have a pretty good idea, but they haven't fully defined those. The third is how CTE programs are of sufficient size, scope, and quality to meet the needs of students served. And 4 is evaluation towards the implementation of CTE programs of study. And that's usually working with post-secondary education. And then the 5th one is how our district will recruit and retain teachers who mirror the student demographics demonstrated in our CTE courses. And up here in number 1, too, a big part of this is looking at our Office of Civil Rights documents and looking at strategies to overcome barriers for our students in various subgroups. So you do have a report with you that shows the actual numbers for all of these categories. But what we looked at is areas where we were over or underrepresented. So the state asked us to look at any programs that have over 75% of one gender. And these are our program areas. And within ACME, which is a combination of architecture, construction, manufacturing, and engineering, we're over in males in manufacturing and over in males in computer science. Actually, this has been an improvement because in the past we were also overrepresented in engineering, and we've leveled that out. And we were also overrepresented in females in medical science, and that has leveled out as well. And then if you look at our other subgroup areas, you can see with ELL, special ed, free and reduced, and homeless, those program areas that are underrepresented. And what we did is we looked at the total high school population and the various subgroups, and then we compared our percentages by program area. The next slide shows additional data points. So you can see in our program areas again, underrepresented compared to the high school population, Asian in quite a few of our program areas, Hispanic, Latino in a number of our program areas as well, Black, African American in manufacturing, worksite learning. These are students that, excuse me, I went back too far. See if I can get back. There we go. And then worksite learning includes our students that could be in internships or cooperative paid worksite learning. And then multiracial in manufacturing. So what we do with this data, and this is just a snapshot, we're also collecting data on our students that have earned college credit and disaggregating the same way our students that have earned industry recognized credentials and our students that are in internships. So we use that data, and when we have professional development with our teachers, we go through and have them do an analysis of this data and look at strategies that we might do to improve and reduce those barriers. And we also meet with our advisory committees. A lot of times they have some really good ideas on how we can support students. Another data snapshot is comparing our staff with our student enrollment. And on the left side here in this column, you'll see the student percentage and then the staff percentage. And this snapshot was taken in May 2020. So again, our most underrepresented area, 24% of our students are Hispanic and 3.6% of our staff are Hispanic. So again, we're looking at working with HR, we go to the career fairs, but what strategies we can use to encourage better representation of our staff with our students as we hire new staff moving forward. We also, this last year, I think you may have heard that there were 8 new graduation options for students, and 2 of those really involve CTE. One was pathway number 4, which was a student could meet their math or their ELA if they took a course that received college credit at the 100 level or above and was recognized by our district as being either English or math. And number 8 sequence is students that complete 2 years in CTE in one program area and either earn an industry recognized credential or college credit. So when you add the 2 together, we had 310 students that were able to graduate via one of these 2 pathways. This also opened the door for us to do some data digging into our current juniors. And if they were, say, a half a credit away from the CTE sequence, we gave that information to the counseling department, and as they met with students, they could encourage them, if they were a struggling student, to continue their CTE sequence so that they can graduate next year. So we always like to pepper in a little bit of some good things that are happening in connected learning. We did run our girls in STEM and boys too. We added in boys too this year. So these were 5th through 8th grade students in our district. We had over 300 students, and you can see we had a few maybe that were a little younger than 5th grade, but they sure enjoyed their participation. These were some of our medical science students that were given a tour of the WSUV mobile unit. These were our animal science students who got a pretty rare tour, the back tour of the zoo. If you've ever watched that television show, I think it's Inside the Zoo, and they go to the back, and it's a very rare tour that they're given. These are some architecture students that went to PSU's School of Architecture. They also did a presentation at LSW Architects, and then they also met the mayor in a tour of City Hall, all pre-COVID. This one you might recognize. So Matt Merlino, who graduated in 2010, somebody might recognize him, was speaking to Union High School students at Microsoft in Redmond about his journey to being a software engineer, coming from Union to MIT to Microsoft. And Kelsey Burris, who's one of our teachers there at Union, took a group of students there to learn more about his career pathway. These are our ASL students doing Beauty and the Beast. And this was a group of students from the engineering program at Heritage that actually did a Q&A with the International Space Station last year. The STEM Academy, which is hosted out of Union, who normally would go out to elementary schools during early releases and provide STEM activities for students in 6 to 7 of our elementary schools. These students decided they wanted to continue that during the school closure. So they got together and they created just a ton of YouTube videos for students to be able to do science experiments at home. This one in particular was called the Magic Insulator. These were some students at Shahala who learned a new program called Tinkercad and came up with these commemorative coins for COVID-19. So they did that like in 2 weeks. Mr. Lovin, who's one of the teachers of the year, did a multitude of YouTube videos of culinary opportunities. So he would prepare meals, send that information home, and provide alternatives for families to create healthy meals. And then these are just some of our teen parents. So Kim Burhow, who works with that program, and another administrator in Vancouver, they got together and put on quite a nice graduation for the teen parents. They made these particular yard signs that they could post, and these are 2 of our teen moms and 1 of our teen dads that graduated. So we had about 135 partners last year that worked with us: worksite learning, guest speaking, advisories, project-based learning. And I'm just so impressed with our teaching staff. A lot of our partners are recommendations from our teachers, and a lot of that career-connected learning that you saw, our teachers just being really creative and having a lot of contacts. And additionally, we have Tony Wise, who's our business outreach coordinator, who also makes a lot of contacts. Really want to thank her for her work. We had 2,400 students participate in some type of worksite learning. This is part of our geometry and construction. Unfortunately, we're still waiting for an opportunity to finish the house that's partially built on that particular location. And then this just breaks down our worksite learning. We have the internships, which I think you're pretty familiar with. We did have a decrease from the previous year. Basically, every internship we started in February had to be closed down. Most employers closed all of our internships down, and then we could not run internships in the summer. What we're doing this year is we do have some interested partners in seeing if we can develop virtual internships, both for students and some virtual teacher tours as well. So we're kind of looking forward to that opportunity. And then the instructional is just what's embedded in classes, like our teaching academy. The transition program stayed about the same. These are our special ed students that are in the 18 to 21 category. And then our cooperative paid students stayed about the same as well. These are our completers, and we do this every year. So a year after they graduate, we actually do some outreach to them. So these are our students that graduated in 2018. The top line shows the number of total completers. These are students that completed 2 years with us in a single program area. And then through surveys and through contacting students, these are the number of respondents we had. And then you can see the percentage of students that after a year were in a 2-year college, a 4-year college, some type of a vocational training program, apprenticeship program, or in the military. These are a little slide on our college credits. Unfortunately, we have seen a decrease in that. We do not have the 1920 data yet from our colleges. This is a result. We did lose a lot of our articulation agreements with Mount Hood Community College because of some of the platforms that they actually developed. And now they're back working with us. So we think we'll be bringing back a lot of those articulation agreements this year. So our goals, and that's in your executive summary, but I just took a little snapshot as well rather than going through every goal. We want to continue working with the middle school and the high school and beyond plan. We actually had all but about 12 students in 8th grade complete the majority of their high school and beyond plan during COVID. So we were pretty excited that we were able to get through that. We have found that Legacy and 49th Street Academy needs some extra support. So we're working on how we can provide support so their students have the same opportunities. As we heard earlier, just to develop strategies to support those non-traditional and underrepresented students. And then with our consortium, we're still continuing to work on our marketing plan and then the teacher virtual tours and possible virtual student internships. I mentioned that comprehensive local needs assessment. So those 5 categories, we also formed a consortium, the same districts plus Cascadia Tech Academy. And we have 5 work groups. And unfortunately, we got through 1 work group before March 13th hit. And that was the group on equity. It was really well received. We had good representation across a multitude of ethnic groups and agencies. So we're working on how we will continue that process this year. And then lastly, all of our preparatory programs need to lead to either an industry certification or dual college credit. So we're at about 85%, and we want to bring that up to 100% in the next year or 2. So that's the end of my report. And, you know, as my last board presentation, because I will be retiring, I did want to thank all the board members for, you know, just your continued work and your support of students and Mr. Merlino. I know that some of these board meetings are lengthy, but I just certainly appreciate your time. And I just want to say to Victoria, since you were here when I came to the district 20 years ago, I believe you were here, that I really appreciate all the work and the projects that led to HELA happening. And I just thank you, especially for your support.
Thank you, Susan. You've been awesome.
You're welcome.
I don't know what we're going to do without you.
Oh, well, they've hired a very good replacement, Justin Birmingham, and he will do really well, I'm sure.
Okay.
Can I say also, Susan, thank you, because if you came 20 years, you and I came about the exact same time to the district. We worked together in many, many projects, many different things over the 20 years. I've always enjoyed working with you. I've always worked hard, and you've always worked well with people. And I just wanted to say I appreciate all the things that we've done together and all the things that you've done for the district.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
It's always, first John, then you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what to do. No, I asked Lori. I'm kind of glad you brought it up. Just to also thank you for all the conversations we've had, all the work you've done to help me understand sort of the scope and opportunities and limitations. Because I think the things that you taught me helped me advocate for the pathways legislation at the WASDA state level and with individual legislators. Of course, it was sponsored by our own Monica Stonier and the other legislators in the area, but was more effective because we talked.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that.
And I'm, I love CTE. I did have a couple of.
Oh yeah, I didn't ask if you had questions, did I? I'm moving to retirement.
I wonder if you could talk for a minute or two about what kinds of frictions or limitations exist because employers insist on having 18-year-olds.
Say that one more time. I didn't quite catch that.
Because employers often insist on having 18-year-olds in their entry-level internship type programs. I recall that we lost the Columbia opportunities over that.
Exactly. There's still a lot of work being done on that. I think SCH has been a good partner to, often when we try to bring on another partner, we'll match them with SCH, with Natalie, and she'll address that fact that you can still bring on 16, 17-year-olds in a different capacity where you're not placing them, on the manufacturing floor, on the engineering floor. You're giving them projects that they can do. Mm-hmm. So I think we're making some progress, but we still have a lot of organizations that just, for liability reasons, when they start reaching up to their corporate offices, will say no students under 18.
And therefore, virtually no students. It's
right.
One of those things. Have you and your folks, I may ask this every year, whether or not you're here, the thought of balancing the choices in computer science so that there are more young women and girls learning that art. Could you talk a little about that? What can we do to get more girls interested in computers?
I think that's just been an ongoing struggle, but it has dropped a little bit. As you saw, it was 80% males. It was about 90% in previous years. We're still not there. I think one of the pieces that's being helpful is programming in the middle school. So we've added some STEM exploration classes. There's STEM innovation classes. And I think having more exposure in middle school will really help students. And again, with that high school and beyond plan, where students are researching and they're learning more about careers and fields of study, I'm hoping that that's going to increase that opportunity as well. I also think we need to find more mentors or community members who are gender, female gender, or represent an ethnic minority, so that students will see people like them who have gone on to these careers. So that's something we're trying to work on as well.
Every workforce projection I've ever seen has its ups and downs for every career except computer science, which is projected to always be in demand. Thank you for bringing this to us.
You're welcome.
I hope to see you before you part ways with the district.
I'll be here a little longer.
Yeah, who knows?
We'll probably cross paths somewhere, so.
Hope so.
Well, thank you again. Unless you have any other questions, I'll say goodnight.
Thank you so much, Susan.
You're welcome.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, Mike, are you going to be up next with
Yep, I'm going to talk really quickly about, we passed the bond 2018. We've done 2 bond sales so far, yes, Sue. And so we typically look at the kind of the cash flow of the projects and when we need to sell additional bonds. We also look at the rate situation nationally. And then also when we sell bonds, we have to be reasonably believe that we'll spend all of those funds within a 3-year period. So doing that, what we're looking at is moving forward at our next, I think at the next board meeting, a resolution to move forward with another bond sale that would occur in early November, I believe is the timeline. Let's see here. So we would have the resolution the 8th. I would go through a rating call with Moody's the week of the 28th. We would actually sell the bonds on the 27th of October. We're talking about $275 million. So the $275 million would be what we would reasonably believe we would spend over the next 3 years. And that would be to, I mean, you drive through the district right now and you see we've just broke ground on Mountain View. We broke ground on Y East. We haven't broke ground yet on the Heritage Project or the Burton projects, but almost everything's going on at this point. I think it would leave us with maybe something like $95 million left to sell. The rates right now, when you look at the charts Mark Prussing shows, are, you know, I don't know how many times we say they're historical lows, but they're still at historical lows. We would anticipate that we'll be able to maintain the $1.77 that we're at right now with rates. So basically just letting you know that at the next board meeting, we'll have a resolution to sell bonds. We'll sell those bonds in late October. What we've done the last several bond sales is do those as a bid. We just bid them. So it's not a negotiated sale, it's a bid sale. So the morning of the sale, we just log in, and I think you may have participated in this in the past, but basically we just leave the bid open, and within the last minute or so, we end up getting boom, 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 a number of bids. We know we're getting the best price that day because we've competitively bid it. So it's just that informational, just let you know. Are there any questions about that or no? I see fingers reaching for a phone.
Unmute me, man. I think it's wonderful to be able to provide this kind of economic stimulus in a time like this.
It is wonderful. I agree with that. And it's great that we can time it to hit the rates. And honestly, when we had the committee that we brought forward probably in 2016 or 17 with David Nierenberg and we had one of the contractor, we had Tracy Smith, right? No, no, Wilson, Tracy Wilson, I'm sorry. Tracy Wilson. We had one of the Angelo family members, Little Al, I think, is that right? I'm not sure if that's right. I'm not sure. Albert, there you go. But I mean, we had the committee that basically recommended running a bond as much as we could and hopefully hit it right with rates on the downward in terms of selling bonds. And at the same time, we saw kind of the peak of some of the cost increases, the prices of construction. And we've done well with respect to hitting bids well. So really that committee, the work that was done with that committee, we've kind of hit everything really well with this bond project. So it does do exactly what you're saying, Rob, and we're able to do everything we said we were going to do, and that's a good thing. So this is just informational more than anything else. But at the meeting on the 8th, there will be the resolution authorizing the sale and then delegating the authority, I think, to me to actually execute the bid sale on that date like we've done in the past. And that's really all I have to say.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Uh-huh.
All right. Next is legislative update.
Rob's probably got more information on the legislative update from sitting in on the WASDA ledge calls. I wouldn't really have anything to say from the perspective of the legislature. I know that there's continued efforts from wide variety of groups to share their information with respect to the potential cuts that might be upcoming in protecting transportation funds. There's efforts around transportation PSEs making efforts on that. I've shared with them the efforts that I've had in terms of the conversations with Senator Billig and Representative Speaker Jenkins in the House and then OSPI. So a lot of the work I'm doing is just trying to help behind the scenes protect or preserve revenue. And maybe Rob can update on what he's hearing through his organization.
I'm starting to hear, go through WASDA and a couple of local conversations is an increased call for the governor to open a special session. That sounds like it would coincide with his budget release, but I don't have any signal, so they'd have the special session and it would spill over into the January regular session or something like that. But nothing concrete, just that even Republicans are calling for it, and there's a smidgen more of a possibility for that. So since we know there are a whole pile of things that can never change about the budget or about how funds are allocated unless the legislature acts, I feel a tiny bit more hopeful. I did want to report to you that I had a meeting with Monica Stonier as WASDA legislative / board member to legislative legislator. We had a really good conversation about school safety in terms of SROs and police. And I showed her the WASDA Legislative Committee idea of expanding requirements to all security personnel, all people involved in school safety. Stuff Evergreen already does, right? And like the other meetings with Paul and a couple other people, they seemed amenable to passing a law that will let us share mandates around safety and around how students interact with police and other security officers. And that's about all I have.
One other thing I would say is I got an email from Melissa Gomboski the other day with a conversation. It was actually a request from Senator Wellman, the Education Committee chair in the Senate, wanting to work to push a legislation recognizing the impact of Henrietta Lacks on society and working with our district on doing that. And so I put her in contact. Actually, Amy Haynes connected with Senator Wellman and Melissa to set up that meeting to work with kids at school on helping try to push legislation. I think probably at the state level, but also the federal level, recognizing the impact that she had on society. So that's exciting, a great thing for our kids. And they're also still, what's that?
Senator Murray visited last year, so her office could probably be looped into something like that.
She did, yep. And she wore her tennis shoes and her jeans to the meeting. So she was a very much the senator in tennis shoes. She was great. Actually, that was a really nice visit.
Speaking of visits to Henrietta Lacks, this October, what was the group that was supposed to come through?
I think it was the State National School Boards Association through Kim Garchow. They wanted to highlight that, but my guess is that I'm sure they've canceled that. So I haven't heard anything about that in quite some time. I just assumed that they are not doing that because of the coronavirus situation.
Yeah, I
think
we would have heard something by now.
Yeah.
Tim was really excited to get that arranged after he saw the school.
Well, maybe we can keep that on the docket for a later time.
Yeah, I'm sure if they do it here, they would ask us again. It's a great program. That's all I have.
All right, thanks. Anybody else have anything for legislative updates? All right, board meeting debrief. I guess I could start off by saying that this was not ideal for me with my technology issues.
It certainly highlights that you have to learn a piece of software to do things this way. And and then it's different on the phones than it is on the computer. It's a frustration. It's a real thing.
It's like a panic when you're trying to get signed on when you only have minutes.
I saw a couple of frustrated comments go by about it when we were trying to solve the technical difficulties.
Oh, for the microphone?
Yeah, because we couldn't get a couple of people unmuted, and someone noticed, someone who wanted to speak, give an oral comment, must not have made the cut or something, but she put it in, it's like she thought she'd signed up. Lori couldn't find her. So there were those technical glitches and programming glitches. And
I think though on that particular one, Rob, the person wrote a letter and didn't sign up for the for the speaking part, and she assumed we would be reading her letter out loud.
That's always a tough call on making the decision to narrow it down to some. I think now that we're taking oral comment, and that we have the ability to do that, I think we just only do that moving forward.
Yeah, the good thing about it is we were all able to read them, and you picked good ones because they pretty much represent the majority of the letters. I mean,
it's the arguments.
It wasn't like they're kind of all saying much of the same thing. So the gist was definitely there, and we're very aware of the letters and that. So that's a good thing.
I do believe though that with there being only specific ones pulled, we have a lot of citizens that had submitted comments that are not happy because they weren't heard. One of the comments that I did see come through asked if we would be posting the citizen comments that we did get that were not read, if we would be posting those with the board minutes.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't
sure
that the board knows about it. It wasn't that all the board members have seen the comments, which is really what the citizen comments are about, is to communicate with the board.
Right.
They wanted them publicly heard as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't have an issue with all of those letters and emails being posted in our board minutes, if people want to go through and read them. And I don't see an issue with that.
We can do that. I'm sure we can do that. Just make a little thicker post, but there's no reason we can't do it.
Yeah. I agree with Victoria. I think
record anyway, so submitting it or including the minutes just lets people see them.
Well, and I think that was the, obviously the citizen comment portion is for them to address us directly, not, which is why we have them face us in the board meeting. But a lot of those times it is because they want everybody to hear what they have to say and to hear. Yeah. And yes, a lot of them were the same things, and we've been reading the same, emails a lot. But I think that, it was just I think if we can just put them in the board minutes to where they're being published and they are being seen, kind of, or heard, and they are being validated, I think would be at least a good.
Yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, and I think moving forward, I think we just, now that we have the capability of just doing the oral comment, that's the way we go.
Yeah, because if the one thing though I do have to say is the reason that they were pulled, just certain ones, was they represented what most of the letters were about. But when you have 60 of them, we'd be here all night trying to read them all, because some are quite long, some are short, but many of them were very repetitious to what we've already seen before. So I don't know.
I think that we've even done that in citizen comments in person, where we mentioned that if somebody's already spoken on the same thing, the last thing I want to do is not let people have an opportunity to speak. And so I don't want it to have appeared that way. I want people to know that we did read everybody's comments, and we do consider them all, and we will post them on the minutes. I think that's a great suggestion, Jenny.
We can thank whoever put that comment in there, so.
It's more than
anything else, Jenny? Oh, from debrief?
No, I think this one was a hard one, and I mean, they're never easy when we're dealing or, having to face certain things like this. But any other comments on how it went?
I think it went pretty well considering the challenges we have. I just want to remind whomever that we need to make sure that the questions that people were asking get put on the FAQ section on the website so that people get those things answered. I know a lot of them we had talked about before, but they maybe came in later or whatever. So
well, as the meeting was going on, I was just keeping an eye on it and copying the questions as they came in. And
yeah,
Mike, I think you have most of them.
You emailed them to me. Yep, I've got them.
2 emails.
So that's another function that as part of a public meeting, I'm not sure that, and I know that we did it our last meeting when we had the fall planning session, and then we had questions around the budget. And I know that we use that kind of as a tool, but I don't think that was ever intended to be like a citizen comment line. So, because it wasn't, I don't even think that anyone used it until the meeting before this one.
No, it wasn't switched on until the meeting before this one. And
yeah, so yeah, I'm not sure if that's a tool that we want to.
I mean, I think it was appropriate to use that during the conversation around the plan when we did it on the 11th. I think it was appropriate with respect to the budget, but I think people have a mechanism to send us questions, and they do. We will respond to the questions that were in there. It's just that typically you wouldn't have a superintendent report, and then people are just asking questions, and we would respond to them.
Right.
I think the one thing that is really kind of nice, though, actually, is the fact that there are so many people participating in what we're doing, and we have so many people watching. I don't know, honestly, I'm not like, I understand all the rules, but I don't think it hurts when we talk about transparency, when they share questions with us that we might not have the mechanism to do it through the meeting, but we certainly do have the mechanism at some point to answer the questions that are asked.
Right.
Yeah, good point.
The WASDA advice has always been that to talk about the statute, and the statute doesn't require any kind of public comment for these meetings. The statute doesn't require it, but it's been such a tradition to allow public comment that it's become a standard practice. So if we were to persist in opening Q&A in Zoom meetings and then preserving those as part of the public record, we would have to continue doing that if we made it a standard practice. But I'd have to ask Abigail Westbrook about what the threshold is for that. And
well, I think on any agenda item that we've had that we take action on, we've always asked for comments from the audience.
Yeah.
So,
and the Q&A tool,
right, typically a report wouldn't be part of that, but the budget hearing, the fall planning, those are all appropriate times maybe to use that tool. I'm not, but we're all navigating this virtual world too as we go. So
I really appreciate the board comments that the other four that you guys made. It made me feel better. You brought things up that I wanted to bring up. So I like hearing from you there, and I think
Once
it's just
again,
hard.
my brain was going faster than my mouth, that I got myself all
Me too.
mixed
It's
up.
the moment we're in, and we'll get through it one way or another.
all right, anything else for board debrief before we adjourn this meeting and then we start our executive session?
I've got nothing else.
Okay, all right, well, let's log off and log back into the executive session. Thank you, everyone.